Excellent!
So for the past 2 years, I have built a computer to take to CES in January that's both portable and powerful. I'm doing it again for the 3rd year in a row and continuing the use of this case right here, the often sought after Corsair 380T. It's discontinued, but people still like it and it still gets used, and every time I do this build, people are like, let me have that case. But other than the case, I have a very powerful system set up here. We're using the 2700X. We have an RTX 2080 Ti. This is what Joe's gonna be editing on as we bring you CES coverage for the following week. I'm gonna go over the parts here, but first I wanted to look back at the past couple years. 2 years ago, when I first built this system in a Mini-ITX form factor, I was able to put in a 6700K, a quad-core 8-thread CPU, and I also paired that with a GTX 1070. The next year, I upgraded to the Core i7 8700K, which is 6 cores and 12 threads. This year, I have the option of either the 2700X from AMD or the 9900K from Intel. Both of them have 8 cores and 16 threads. I would have gone with the Intel, but I'm actually kind of using that in the system back here. More on that in a future video. So for today, I went with the 2700X. Let's take a look at the rest of the parts. I love having all the parts arrayed for fresh new builds, but again, we are starting with the Ryzen 7 2700X 8-core 16-thread CPU from AMD, and of course there's going to be people who are like, oh, the 9900K would have done you better. Trust me guys, I was really close to using that, but it is in use and I need it for the next couple of days, and this system needs to get set up so it's ready to go for on the road. So nothing wrong with this at all. 8 cores, 16 threads, plenty of processing power for rendering our videos, and I also have the retail box for it still, which is nice. You're going to pair that with the B450i Aorus Pro Wi-Fi from Gigabyte, which is a very nice full-featured Mini-ITX motherboard, which has an M.2 slot, as well as a pretty cool look to it with some silver heat sinks going on. If you have a 2080 Ti to use, you should probably use it, so that's what I'm doing with the Gigabyte GeForce RTX 2080 Ti. This is the gaming OC 11G, which does come manufacturer overclocked, and it's also got a 3-fan cooling solution. Also not terribly huge as graphics cards go, which is nice since we are building in a somewhat more limited space. For our power supply, we have the Cooler Master V650, 80 plus gold, pretty small power supply and all black cables, so it's been a solid one. I've used it in multiple builds in the past. For a cooler, we've got the Hyper 212 Black Edition. I was going to go with a water cooler in here, but I want to keep things simple, and with an air cooler, there's just zero chance of anything failing, apart from maybe a fan, but even if that happens, we can swap that out pretty easily. For memory, I have 2 sticks of Corsair Vengeance RGB. These are 16 gigs per DIMM, so we're gonna have 32 gigs total. Funny story, I only have 10 16 gig DIMM DDR4 sticks. They're all in Riptide, so I actually stole these 2 from Riptide. These are part of a 128 gig kit, but they'll work for us in a pinch, and I won't need Riptide since we'll be on the road. So that's our memory. And finally for storage, we're going all solid state, no spinning mechanical hard drives here. We have a 960 Pro 512 gig for our main operating system drive, and then we've got a 1 terabyte SanDisk Ultra 2 and a 2 terabyte Crucial MX500. So 3 terabytes of raw SSD storage space plus 500 gigs for operating system and programs. So those are the parts we're working with today. I think this is going to be a pretty awesome and portable build. So let's get started putting everything together. My recent bathroom remodel has reinforced that you should always double check that things fit before you go ahead with proceeding as if it will, and I double checked if this will fit, and it won't. So I need to switch to something else. I'd rather not try to wedge a water cooler in here for the same reasons I talked about at the beginning of this video, but we used the CryoRig H7 in the past. I have an H7 Quad Lumi here. The Quad Lumi is updated to be compatible with AM4, so going to be removing the Hyper 212 Black, swapping this in, and then I think we're going to get a little fancy too and add some Noctua NF A12X25 PWM fans as well. So I was hoping to have to go through 3 different aftermarket coolers in this build. Not really, but what we have also discovered is that the H7 is also just a little bit too tall to fit in here. I think this is because the AM4 socket itself is a little bit higher up than the LGA socket that Intel uses, and that's what we've used the past couple of years, is Intel CPUs. So not enough clearance. I am breaking down and switching to a liquid cooler. That's going to be the Enermax LiquidFusion 240 right here, which I chose because this case only accepts a 240mm radiator all-in-one liquid cooler, and it was the first one that I grabbed that was the right size. And I've already done a test fit here, and yes, this should fit and have enough room for the actual cooler to get over to the socket. And I'm still going to use Noctua fans. I was not expecting this build to get this complicated, but 200mm fan here from NZXT has non-standard 200mm mounting points, so can't mount that. The only other 200mm fan I have is this Thermaltake Ring 20, which is a very nice 200mm fan, but it's also RGB, and Thermaltake's RGB fans have a single plug, so you can't just be like, I don't care about the RGB, I want to plug this fan and just have it work. You have to use this controller box. Controller box requires its own power connection to the power supply, requires a USB connection to the motherboard, and then you can plug your fan into that. I'm regretting this decision already, but I've already made it, so we're pressing forward to install our 200mm fan up here in the front. Remember what I just said about regretting this decision already? All right, we're switching back to a 140 up here. That's not worth the effort. All right, I put a Corsair light loop in there. Fortunately, these have separate plugs, so I'm just gonna be plugging in the fan power, not the RGB, since I don't wanna bother installing an RGB controller in there. Once I get this motherboard installed, it's going to be difficult to reach a lot of the plugs on it. So I want to do the plugging as I put it in and while it's out here and loose. So I'm also going to be mounting the cooler on top of that. But I have 4 fans in this case, 2 on the radiator for the CPU all in one, the front intake and the rear exhaust. Front intake and the rear exhaust I'm going to wire up to the fan controller on the case, and that's just got a separate SATA power that will power both of those. The 2 fans for the radiator, I've put a little fan splitter on, so those can both plug right into the CPU fan header. And then there's one more plug here, and that's for the inline pump on the cooler, and that will plug into the extra fan header on the motherboard, of which there are 1, which is right down here. And with the graphics card installed, I believe everything is good to go with the system. So I have plugged in the power, I have switched on the switch, we have some memory that's lit up. So there you have it, guys. The CES 2019 build is complete. Of course, we need to get Windows loaded up and get all the software set up. But fortunately for now, the system is working, so we can proceed with that. Guys, I'm so excited to bring you CES coverage this year in 2019. So if you're excited to, leave a thumbs up on this video. And if there's any products coming out soon that you think might be launching at CES, leave me a comment in the comments section below and let me know what you think that might be. And maybe I'll try to cover it next week from Las Vegas, Nevada. Thanks again for watching this video, guys, and we'll see you next time.